Some men blow up. They make calls they regret, send emails that get screenshotted, say things at Thanksgiving that nobody forgets by Christmas. Me? I called the venue coordinator, rescheduled everything under a different name, and went back to watching the game. I'm Frank Calloway, 58 years old, retired civil engineer, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. I've built bridges over rivers that flood every spring and held together projects where 3 contractors quit in the same week. I know how to keep a structure standing under pressure. What I don't do, what I have never once done in 58 years on this earth, is let somebody walk into my life, take something that belongs to me, and leave thinking they did me a favor. Welcome back to Dad's Calm Revenge. Settle in, get comfortable, and remember, every person in these stories believed they were the reasonable one. They were not. Hit subscribe so you never miss what happens next. This story begins with a wedding venue I'd been holding for 11 months. My wife Carol passed 4 years ago, ovarian cancer. She was 54, the kind of woman who remembered every birthday in the extended family without writing a single one down. The kind of woman who brought homemade banana bread to new neighbors before they'd even finished unpacking. She was mine for 29 years, and I still reach for her side of the bed on cold mornings without thinking about it. We had one son, Liam. He's 30 now, works in commercial real estate, has his mother's patience and my stubbornness, which is a combination that has served him reasonably well. A few years after Carol passed, Liam got serious with a woman named Jess. I liked Jess. Sharp. Funny, the kind of person who held her own in a conversation without needing to dominate it. She had a good job as a hospital administrator in Columbus, and she laughed at my jokes even when they didn't deserve it. What I did not like, what I registered from the very first Sunday dinner, was Jess's mother. Her name was Roberta Finch. Let me describe Roberta Finch with the accuracy she has earned. Roberta was 63, once divorced, and moved through rooms the way a storm front moves through a weather map. Loudly, with advance warning, and leaving things rearranged behind her. She was the kind of woman who gave unsolicited opinions on other people's home decor and then looked confused when nobody thanked her. She told me once, at a Memorial Day cookout, that my backyard had a lot of potential, which is the passive-aggressive version of saying it currently had none. She called Liam her son in conversations with people who hadn't met him yet. Not her son-in-law. Her son. I noted that. I was polite to Roberta because I loved Liam and Liam loved Jess. That was my operating principle, and I stuck to it even when it cost me. When Liam and Jess got engaged, I offered to help with the venue. Not out of obligation, out of something else entirely. Carol had always talked about Whitmore Estate. It's a historic property about 40 minutes outside Columbus. A restored 1890s farmhouse and barn on 12 acres, old hardwoods, a pond that catches the sunset like something off a calendar. Carol used to drive past it on the way to her sister's house, and she'd say the same thing every time without fail. Someday, when Liam gets married, that's where it has to be. She said it so many times that Liam grew up believing it was already decided. The moment he got engaged, he called me before he called anyone else. "Dad," he said, "you know where I want to do it." I did know. I called Whitmore Estate the following morning. There was a cancellation that freed up a date in October. A Saturday peak fall foliage, the kind of day the place was built for. The event coordinator, a calm, organized woman named Patricia, walked me through everything on the phone. To hold the date, they required a non-refundable deposit of $3,500. The full rental package for the barn and grounds came to $18,000. I paid the deposit the same afternoon by credit card. I had 11 months to plan. I told Liam that evening. He went quiet in the way he goes quiet when something matters too much for words. "Dad," he finally said, "Mom would have loved this." "I know," I said. "That's the point. I want you to understand what that deposit meant. It wasn't just money, though $3,500 is not a small number. It was 11 months of Carol's voice in the back of my head saying someday. It was the look on my son's face when I told him the date was locked. It was the October Saturday she had always imagined, now existing as a real thing in the world, held by a receipt with my name on it. That's what I was protecting. I want to be clear about that before I tell you what happened next. The call came on a Wednesday night in early March. Liam. I was in the kitchen reheating leftover pot roast watching the news with the volume low. Hey, Dad, you got a minute? Always. What's going on? A pause. The particular kind of pause that has weight behind it. The kind Liam only uses when he's been rehearsing the conversation and still doesn't feel ready for it. There's kind of a situation with the venue. I set down my fork. What kind of situation? So, and I want you to hear me out before you react. Roberta has been talking to Jess about the wedding. A lot. And she has this place she wants. Her cousin owns an event space over in Westerville, and she's been saying it would mean a lot to her personally if we held the reception there. It would be more affordable for the family and Liam. Whitmore is booked. I paid the deposit. I know, Dad. I know you did. But Roberta is saying that maybe the deposit could be transferred, or maybe you could. She was kind of suggesting you'd understand if things changed, that you'd want to be flexible for the family. Flexible for the family. I said those 3 words out loud, and I said them slowly, the way you read a contract clause you don't trust. She's also been. Liam paused again. She's been telling Jess that Whitmore is too far for her relatives to travel, and that a barn wedding is a little dated, and that she thinks you chose it without consulting anyone. I stopped him there. Liam, did I ask for Roberta's input on where I put my money? No, sir. Does Roberta know what that venue means? He didn't answer that the way I expected. What he said was, I told Jess. I assume Jess told her. I sat with that for a moment. Has she contacted the venue? Another pause. This one shorter, but worse. She called Patricia last week. She said she was calling on behalf of the family to ask about the cancellation policy. Patricia apparently told her she'd need to speak with the deposit holder directly. I thanked Liam for telling me. I told him I loved him. I said we'd talk more soon and that he shouldn't worry about it. Then I hung up and sat at the kitchen table. Same table where Carol and I used to do the crossword on Sunday mornings. And I looked at the pot roast going cold on my plate. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was angry, though I was. I didn't sleep well because something in my chest had gone tight and quiet, in a way I recognized. It was the same feeling I'd had in the days after Carol died, when I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there, when ordinary objects would suddenly remind me of her, and just for a second the world would tilt sideways. Roberta Finch had never met Carol. She had no idea what Whitmore Estate represented. And she was over there calling event coordinators on behalf of the family, like she owned a seat at a table she'd never been invited to. The next morning I called Patricia at Whitmore Estate before 9 a.m. She remembered me. Of course she did. I'd called 3 times since the booking to ask about tent options and catering referrals. Patricia, I said, I understand you received a call from a woman named Roberta Finch last week. A careful pause. She said she was a family member inquiring about the cancellation terms. She is not authorized to make any changes or inquiries on this booking. I am the deposit holder. I am the only person who can alter this reservation. I need that noted on the account. Absolutely, Patricia said. I'll flag it right now. Just so you know, we do not release any booking information or process any changes without written consent from the named account holder. I appreciate that. Now, I have a separate question. Is there any chance you have another Saturday in October still available? Different date, same fall window. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear typing. Actually, we just had something come back. A corporate booking that released. 3rd Saturday in October. It's only available because someone canceled it this morning. How much to hold it? Same terms, she said. $3,500 deposit, non-refundable. Book it, I said. She booked it. I sat back in my office chair. I keep a home office in what used to be the guest room. And I felt something shift. Not satisfaction yet. Something earlier than satisfaction. More like the moment in an engineering project when you realize the design is going to hold. The structure is sound. You don't celebrate yet. You just know. I didn't tell Liam. I didn't tell anyone. I went about my week normally. I went to my Thursday night poker game with the same 3 guys I've played with since 1997. I called my sister in Cincinnati on Sunday the way I always do. I watched the Buckeyes game and did not think about Roberta Finch for nearly 4 hours, which felt like a personal achievement. The call I'd been expecting came on a Saturday morning 10 days later. It wasn't Liam this time. It was Jess. Now, I want to be fair to Jess. She's not a bad person. She loves my son. She treated Carol's memory with genuine respect from the first time she came to this house. And I believe to this day that she did not fully understand what she was agreeing to when she let her mother take the wheel on this. But she was the one who called, which told me the conversation had been organized and that Roberta was behind it. Frank, hi, do you have a minute? Of course, Jess. So, Liam and I have been talking, and we feel really bad about all the back and forth with the venue, and we want you to know how much we appreciate everything you've done. But we've been thinking about what makes the most sense for everyone, and Roberta's cousin's space in Westerville is actually really lovely, and it would save you money, and it means a lot to Roberta that, Jess. Has Roberta already made arrangements with her cousin's venue? A pause. The brief kind. The kind that means yes. She made a tentative inquiry. What does tentative mean in this context? Another pause. She may have given them a date. The date I have at Whitmore? Jess didn't answer that directly. What she said was, she thought that since you'd want to help us start our life without a big financial burden, you'd understand why it made more sense. Jess, I said. What I understand is that Roberta contacted a venue using my date without my permission and without telling me. That's what I understand. Silence. I'm not going to Westerville, I said. The wedding is at Whitmore Estate. That has not changed. I said it calmly. The flat, settled calm that Carol used to say was more final than any argument I ever made at volume. I said goodbye. I told Jess I hoped she had a good weekend, and I hung up. Then I called Liam. He picked up on the first ring. Did you know about the Westerville venue? I asked. He took a breath. I knew Roberta had looked into it. Did you know she'd given them our date? A silence that answered my question. Liam, I said, I want to explain something to you and I want you to listen without interrupting. That venue is where your mother wanted you to get married. Not metaphorically, literally. She said it out loud in that car every time we drove past it for 15 years. I have a deposit receipt with my name on it. I have 11 months of planning behind it. Roberta Finch does not get to make phone calls on my behalf and give away something I paid for because her cousin runs an event barn in Westerville. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, I know, Dad. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop it once it started moving. That's the part I heard, not the apology. The acknowledgement that it had started moving, that things had been put in motion he hadn't interrupted. That part I sat with for a while after we hung up. Here's what I did next, and I want to be precise because the details matter. I called Patricia at Whitmore Estate. I told her I was making a change. I asked her to move my booking from the first Saturday in October to the third Saturday, the second date I'd reserved, and to release the first Saturday back into the general availability pool. She confirmed it. The first Saturday was now wide open. I did not tell Liam. I did not tell Jess. I did not tell Roberta. I went back to the poker game, called my sister, watched more Buckeyes, and waited with the patience of a man who has spent 30 years in civil engineering, where the job is 90% preparation, and the result takes care of itself. I found out what happened next in pieces. The first piece came from Liam, about 3 weeks later. He called on a Tuesday evening and his voice had a particular tightness to it that told me something had gone sideways. Dad, did you change the date on the Whitmore booking? I moved it to the third Saturday. Yes. A long silence. Roberta called Whitmore this morning. She told them she was confirming a booking for our original date on behalf of the family. And Patricia told her the first Saturday was no longer reserved under our account. Roberta apparently told Patricia there must be a mistake. And Patricia apparently told her there was no mistake, that the account holder had requested the change, and that the first Saturday had been released and rebooked by another party within 48 hours. I let that sit on the line for a moment. So the date she gave her cousin's competitor is now booked by someone else, I said. Yes. And the date she was planning to use at Whitmore no longer belongs to us. Yes. Liam, I said. The wedding is still on. Same month, same venue, same vision. I just moved it 2 weeks. Another silence. A different kind this time. Thinking silence. She's furious, he said. I gathered, I said. How's Jess? He thought about this. She told me last night that she thinks her mom overstepped. That she should have talked to you first. Good, I said. Because she did. I know. Is the wedding still happening? I asked. Because if it is, I need Patricia to start the catering referral process. He actually laughed at that. A short one. Yeah, Dad. The wedding is still happening. The second piece came in the form of a phone call I did not expect. Roberta called me. She had gotten my number from Jess, which I noted. The call came on a Friday afternoon while I was in the garage reorganizing the shelving unit, which is the kind of task that requires just enough focus that you can't think about anything stressful, but not so much that you can't hold a phone. Frank, it's Roberta. Roberta, I said. I set down the shelf bracket I was holding. I think there's been a significant misunderstanding that has caused a great deal of unnecessary stress for this family. I just want to clear the air and talk about how we move forward, because Jess is upset and Liam is in the middle, and I don't think that's fair to either of them. I agree, I said. Go ahead. She explained her version. She had only been trying to help. She had connections that could save money. She hadn't realized. The Whitmore booking was as sentimental as it apparently was, though nobody had communicated that clearly. She felt that her input had been dismissed without consideration, which was hurtful, given how much she cared about her daughter's happiness, and she felt that my moving the date was, and here she chose the word carefully, retaliatory. I let her finish. Roberta, I said, you called a venue where I hold a deposit and inquired about canceling it. You gave another venue a date that belonged to my booking without telling me. Then you called Whitmore again to confirm that date as if you were the account holder. I moved my reservation 2 weeks because the first Saturday was no longer secure once you started contacting venues on my behalf without authorization. That's not retaliation. That's property management. She went very quiet. Nobody took anything from you, I said. I still have a Whitmore booking. Liam and Jess are still getting married in October. I just made sure the date was mine to control. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. I would appreciate, she finally said, if you would consider releasing one of your Whitmore dates so that my family and I could potentially use the venue for the rehearsal dinner. I thought about that for about 3 seconds. The second Saturday is already spoken for by someone else, I said. The third Saturday is mine. If you'd like to discuss rehearsal dinner options with Patricia, I'd suggest you contact her and book something independently, in your own name, for a date that doesn't conflict with the wedding. I'll let Patricia know you may be reaching out. Another long pause. I think you've made your point, Frank, she said. I haven't made any point, I said. I've protected my deposit. I kept my voice even. The same register I use on a job site when a contractor is telling me the concrete pour went wrong. Steady. Factual. No heat in it. Carol used to say that voice was the one she trusted most out of all my voices, because it meant I already knew exactly what came next. I said goodbye to Roberta. I wished her a pleasant evening. I hung up and went back to the shelving unit. The full picture assembled itself slowly, the way these things always do. From Liam, from Jess, from one very illuminating conversation that happened at the rehearsal dinner 3 weeks before the wedding, which Roberta had indeed organized herself at a restaurant in Westerville, which I attended with perfect good humor because my son asked me to, and because I am, when it counts, capable of sitting across a table from someone and eating a perfectly acceptable chicken piccata without incident. What I learned was this. Roberta had been so confident the Whitmore booking would fold that she'd told people at her book club about the Westerville venue before anything was finalized. She'd told them about the cousins' connection, the deal she'd arranged, the way she'd managed the situation. She'd told her sister in Dayton. She'd made calls. She had, in short, positioned herself as the person who solved the wedding venue problem. Before the problem was solved, before anyone had agreed it was a problem. When the first Saturday got released and rebooked, she had nothing to show for any of it. The cousins' venue took the inquiry fee and moved on. The people she'd told at book club had to be updated with a different story, and she ended up booking a rehearsal dinner restaurant at her own expense in Westerville, 40 minutes from where the wedding was actually happening, which he attended in the particular silence of a person who has lost an argument they weren't supposed to be having. Jess told me, 3 days before the wedding, that Roberta had complained to her twice about the Whitmore date change, and that both times Jess had said something to the effect of, "Mom, it was his booking. He can move it whenever he wants." I appreciated that more than I told her. The wedding itself was a Saturday in mid-October. The hardwoods at Whitmore Estate had turned. The pond was flat and bronze in the late afternoon light. Patricia had coordinated everything with the quiet efficiencies of someone who'd been doing this for 20 years, and the barn was lit up warm in the early evening, like something Carol would have clipped from a magazine and stuck on the refrigerator with one of those little fruit magnets she collected. I walked Liam down to the altar. We'd agreed on that together. Just the two of us walking out from the side door. No processional, no ceremony within the ceremony, just a father and his son. And when I looked at him standing there in the suit we'd bought together at a department store on High Street, I thought about Carol in the passenger seat of the car, saying it every single time. Someday, when Liam gets married, that's where it has to be. Someday was that Saturday. I didn't cry at the ceremony. I came close, but I didn't. I did go stand by the pond by myself for about 10 minutes during cocktail hour. The caterer was passing trays of something with prosciutto, and the band was doing a sound check in the barn, and I just stood out there in my dress shoes in the grass and looked at the water and thought about her. I said it out loud to nobody and to her. Here we are, Carol. The reception was everything she would have wanted. Loud and warm, and a little chaotic in the good way. Liam danced badly and happily. Jess's bridesmaids made a lot of noise during the toasts. My sister from Cincinnati cried 3 separate times and claimed at each instance that she was fine. I danced once, to something slow, mostly because my neighbor back home had made me promise I would, and I kept the promise. Roberta was there, of course. We were cordial. We were adults. We sat at different tables, and we smiled at each other across the barn, the way two people smile when they've already said everything that needed saying, and there's nothing left to prove. She gave a toast. It was gracious. I gave her that. A week after the wedding, I sat down at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and wrote out what the whole thing had cost me. The deposit adjustment, the date transfer administrative fee Patricia had waived, but I'd planned to pay. The difference in catering packages between the two dates, a small thing, but real. The overnight stay in a Columbus hotel I'd booked so I wouldn't have to drive home at midnight in dress shoes. The tux rental, which I might have financed differently if the past 11 months had been less complicated. I totaled it. Then I added a line I labeled, with complete sincerity, reservation security cost. The $3,500 of the second deposit, which I'd paid in March, and which Whitmore had applied toward the final invoice, but which I had paid specifically because Roberta Finch had made it necessary. Grand total, $9,200. I put it in an envelope addressed to Roberta. Inside the envelope I also put a note. It said, Roberta, I don't expect payment, I expect acknowledgement. This is what your involvement cost. Consider it a record, not a request. Frank. I gave the envelope to Liam. Liam gave it to Jess. Jess gave it to Roberta. Liam called me 2 days later and said Roberta had opened the envelope at her kitchen table, read the itemized sheet twice, read the note, set both down, and sat there without saying a single word for what Jess later described to him as a very long time. I thought about that image for a while. A very long time. Jess and Liam are doing well. They bought a house in Upper Arlington, close enough that I can drive over without planning ahead, and far enough that I don't do it too often. Jess calls me on Sundays sometimes, which I didn't expect, and which I appreciate more than I've told her. Roberta and I exist in a workable arrangement. Holidays, birthdays, the ordinary infrastructure of extended family. She says please and thank you. I say please and thank you. We have never again discussed wedding venues, deposits, or the month of October, which seems right to me. There is a photograph on my phone that I keep meaning to print and frame. It's from the reception. Late evening, the barn behind us, the pond just visible past the tree line. Liam and I are standing side by side in our suits. He's looking at the camera and I'm looking at him, the way you look at something you waited a long time to see and can't quite believe is actually happening. Carol's folder is still on my old laptop. I don't delete it. I added one photo to it, after the wedding. Just one. The exterior of Whitmore Estate in the October light, the hardwoods blazing, the barn doors open, warm light spilling out across the grass. I added a caption under it. Someday, here we are. I'm Frank Calloway. I don't blow up. I don't threaten. I don't make scenes. I book a better date. I hold the line. And I let the October light do the rest. If this story meant something to you, Hit that like button and subscribe. There are more of these, and every last one of them is true.